Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for making it to the last panel of the day. Hopefully it'll be informative and that will end today with energy and good information for you. So as per the title of this panel, to say that we've entered an era of unprecedented disruption is really an understatement. We had the COVID-19 pandemic just 6 years ago. We have climate change. The El Nino weather phenomenon is slated to start later this year. Meanwhile, there's an increasing frequency of conflict, whether it's the Russia-Ukraine war and now the Iran war. That's on top of trade wars, and also geopolitics are getting very messy. Meanwhile, both technology and regulation are changing at a very rapid pace. That's why it's more important than ever to understand market trends, where the seed industry has been before and where it's headed, so that companies can make decisions to ensure business continues and that our food systems are secured. I'm joined here today by two experts who have had a very close eye on the data. Bharti Malhotra is the Senior Principal Analyst and the lead crop science, and she's the lead for crop science market research at S&P Global, and she's based in the US. And Shaun Wilken, he is a strategic solution specialist at A-Insights, who is based in the Netherlands. So, Bharti, let's start with you. Okay. The seed market has. Yes. Oops. We can yes, share this. Yeah. The seed market has really exploded over the last decade. So I'd love to hear from you. If you had to name the top 3 or 4 things that have led to that growth, what would they be?
All right. So, I'll first start with the structure of the seed industry so that people can get the background, and that also gives you a view of what are the key factors that have led to the growth of the industry. So if you look at the graph towards the left, it's showing the overall seed market share by crop. And in 2025, we have estimated the market value by $57 billion. That is at ex-manufacturer level, taking out the distribution margins. So if you look at the graph, you see the largest share is coming from corn, followed by soybean, and together they are forming 60% of the market share. And then comes the vegetables, and the graph in the middle is showing the share of the vegetables. So basically, this gives you the answer also. The largest share that is covered by corn and soybean are the biggest driver for the market growth during the past decade. And also, if you look at the graph on the right, that is giving you the share by region. You see North America as the largest market, and the fastest growing market is Latin America. And what's common there? Common is GM seed that has led to growth in this market. So seed is a very technological driven industry, and after the introduction of the GM corn and the soybean and the other GM crops in 1996, the market grew exponentially. It grew by 8% between 2005 and 2015. And the reason for that was the higher seed prices that were coming due to stacking up of seeds, which was bringing more value to the farmers. And other than that, a lot of area was getting converted from the conventional seeds to the certified seeds. That was another reason. And then you can imagine yourself, GM seeds are currently grown on 18 to 19% of the global crop area, and they account for almost 50% of the global seed market. That shows the change in the price and the adoption. So that was the key technology that has driven the market in the past.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I think some of the stats that you might want to talk about are here as well. Here. Okay, so looking at this graph, we can see that the growth trajectory is definitely on an upswing, although it is set to slow down a bit over the next decade. What are some of the main drivers for growth in the past, and why is it set to slow down? And why is it set to slow down going forward?
So basically, as I mentioned, the GM seeds were the biggest driver in the past. Before the introduction of GM seed, if you look at market growth, it was around 2 to 3%. Going forward also, we are expecting around 3% of the growth in this decade. But although I have not covered it more than 2035, but going forward, we are expecting a lot of growth coming in the market. So first I'll talk about why we are seeing the 3% of the market growth during this decade. And also I would like to mention this one point here, This forecast was created before the Middle East situation. So I'm expecting a little revision and the market will go a little higher once we have our new numbers out. But like right now, if we just go with a 3 to 4% of growth in this decade, the growth will be driven by, of course, the GM technology, the introduction of new corn and soybean trade in US and Brazil and Argentina, but also through the technologies like hybrid wheat, hybrid vegetables, direct seeded rice, so and the introduction of GM corn in China. So these will together, lead to growth in the market. Now to your question, why it is not as high as it was in the previous decade. The reason for that, previously the market was not mature. Now it's already a mature market. GM is a mature market, so we are not expecting that kind of growth. The another reason, as I said, it's a technology-driven market. So, the lot of, the value comes in the market through the introduction of new trades, and we are seeing many of the new trades, whether it's, Viconic soybean or your hybrid wheats, they are expected to come in market around 2027. And it takes around 6 to 7 years for a trade to reach to its full commercial potential. So that's the reason I think we are expecting more of a market growth after 2035. And also then the new technologies like new breeding techniques or the biofuel as a ramping up driver, we will see their impact after 2035 in the next decade. So we'll see more growth going forward. And this during this decade, we will see a conservative kind of growth.
Thank you so much for that look into the future. You did mention a few of the disruptions that could alter a bit of that growth as well. So I wanted to turn to Shaun because Shaun has this amazing graphic on all of the things that should be on our radars. It's quite a lot. It's very overwhelming. And so Shaun, I'd love if you could just give us the really broad view of what we're looking at here in terms of all of the key dynamics and disruptors for the seed industry.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, it's a lot. But I think if you look at the market at the moment, there's a lot happening. There's a confluence of short-term drivers, long-term drivers, everything coming together, and we still need to operate as businesses and make a profit while keeping in mind all these disruptors. So it's complexity on top of complexity, and I think managing that complexity is what's really, really important.
Thank you so much. And there's a lot going on in the trade space as well. I'd love if you could explain to us this map.
Okay. So in 2025, the word of the year was tariffs, and what we saw there was tariffs being raised, but at the same time, there was a proliferation of free trade agreements. And what we're seeing is hasn't yet, but this will reshape global trade to some degree as these free trade agreements come in between major zones, and understanding what this is going to do to your crop or your commodity as these tariffs these tariff reductions get phased in over anything from 0 years to 15 years, and that's going to reshape trade and reshape supply and demand around the globe.
That makes a lot of sense. And Bharti, you've also been tracking the trade agreements as well. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yes, so like most of us know that seeds are mostly they are traded freely, and they are not they are mostly under free trade agreement. But still last year after U.S. trade war, we have seen there is a reduction in import of the seeds in U.S. by around 30% and the export by 20%. And I think, even though seeds are traded freely, I think the biggest reason behind was the uncertainty. People were not knowing like what is going to happen, and there were border issues, there were challenges companies were facing with the paperwork that led to that decline in the imports in US last year by 30%, and then the export decline majorly due to the strengthening of US dollar, which is, which has created competitiveness in the market. So yes.
Yeah. I'm actually going to go back to this slide really quick. So one of the things that we have here along the top is NGTs, also known as precision breeding. So Shaun, I wondered if you could talk to us a little bit about this regulatory question. What's included? What are some of the issues that are starting to arise, and what should the seed industry be aware of in terms of coming challenges around precision breeding?
I think the key call out here is let's not forget about the consumer. And when you speak to your friends and your family, and topics like NGTs, CRISPR-Cas, even GMO come up, not a lot of the friends and family are really in depth on these topics. So I think my concern, and coming from 15 years of potato processing in B2B, don't lose the consumer. And the consumer is going to have some fuzziness, some ambiguity as to what this thing is. But I think we need to do a lot more education and support of the consumer to make these decisions. Otherwise, we develop crops that, at the end of the day, don't have end markets because of fears or concerns.
And I know that AI is, of course, totally changing the industry. Can you talk about AI a little bit in the context of NGTs?
Certainly. So I think there's a massive opportunity with AI and NGTs, and I wouldn't be the first to say so. I think what does surprise me is when I walk around today that I don't see too much with AI and genomic techniques on the floor yet. But looking at the advancements in AI, and not just ChatGPT, not just Claude, not just LLMs, but deep learning, machine learning models that can solve problems. And we've seen this in this decade with Google, with AlphaFold, and taking protein folding, which would take years, down to minutes or seconds. Now, folding a protein is one thing. Looking and seeing what the impact of a crop is a completely different thing. So maybe we're not quite there yet to model all these variables, but I think in a very short space of time we will be with a big enough compute power to do that. So if that brings development time down from 10 to 15 years, down to a smaller, well, down to a much shorter period, I think we'll see acceleration of development of seed traits.
Definitely. I can't imagine what next year, at this rapid clip of innovation, I can't imagine what we'll be hearing next year about AI and NGTs. Bharti, is there anything else that you wanted to add on AI and how it is changing the industry and some of the issues that some of the seed companies here should be aware of?
Yeah, sure. So before I go to AI, I'll make my one comment on NGTs and then I'll move to AI. Other than the consumer adoption, that is definitely a big thing. For NGT, I believe the regulatory harmonization is also very important. That's also a challenge in case of NGT because in some countries it is being assessed at the product level. At some countries it's being assessed at the technology level. And there's a lot of non-regulatory harmonization problems. So that is one thing. Moving to AI, I'm seeing AI is definitely, everybody is seeing AI is emerging up and coming up with a lot of solutions. And as mentioned by Shaun, maybe the AI could be leveraged at the breeding level for the innovation of new, for development of new varieties. And so the trait development, varietal development, AI could be helpful with the quality assessment in seed. I've seen some of the companies and exhibition here wherein they are showcasing how they are using AI vision tools for the quality assessment that will reduce the labor cost, that will reduce the time. And there is, the AI is also being used for precision a recommendation for seed that is kind of moving towards a prescription model, but it's not like, I don't know like at what stage it is, but this could be a near future wherein AI is looking at the seed genetics and then recommending the type of seed to be grown in a particular soil and the particular weather. So yeah, so these are the areas wherein AI can be really beneficial and helpful for the seed industry.
Fascinating. On the topic of gene editing, just to go back to that for a moment, there's a whole panel on it tomorrow, so be sure to check that out. I think it'll be a really interesting conversation. There's so much more we can say on AI, but I want to move on to the Middle East conflict because I know that's on everybody's mind here. It has been truly disruptive for global trade. How is it impacting the seed industry and what's ahead in the coming year and in the coming next year's planting season? Here.
Thank you. All right, give me a second. Yes, so this is my slide. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, talking about the Middle East conflict, it's the real example of how geopolitics, transmits through value chain, from energy prices to fertilizers to the input prices and eventually to seeds. So the graph here you are seeing here is the base price forecast for from the S&P Global, which is reaching around $125 per barrel at the base scenario, and at the worst case scenario, it is expected to go to $185 per barrel. So, the oil prices have cascading impact on not just on the seed industry, but on the entire industry. And this is leading to increase in crop prices, whether it is wheat, soybean, and corn. And other than that, we all know it has a major impact on the fertilizer prices, not just because of the trade disruption, but also because of the feedstock that goes for the fertilizers. And then we see because of that, although we are not seeing any disruption in the 2026 planting season, especially in the northern hemisphere, but it will increase the cost of seed production in the southern hemisphere and in the 2027 season. It will, other than that, if we move to the other input sector, that is crop protection, wherein we see a moderate impact, not coming again from the trade disruption like it was in case of fertilizer, but coming again due to the feedstock for the certain agrochemicals that are like petroleum based. And other than that, again, the same logistics disruption, the high energy prices, so that is leading to some disruption, but not a supply chain disruption. In case of seed, as I already mentioned, we don't see any impact as of now in 2026 currently, but yes, towards the southern hemisphere season and for the next year. So definitely we are expecting the prices to go upward.
Yeah, okay. So everyone needs to get planning their budgets for the next planting season. Shaun, is there anything you wanted to add to that in terms of disruptions that you're seeing in your work?
If we look at all these disruptions, it comes with changes to our supply and demand balance. And the agri-food system might look like a big behemoth, but it's a very, very delicate thing, and that balance is important. And any changes to our dietary preferences are going to have a big impact on the food industry. So I think for me, the big call out would be please have a look and see what the impact is of GLP-1 drugs and weight loss drugs, because this is having a big impact already, where we see that household consumption is dropping. We're seeing about a 5% drop in in food spend per household. What does look like a positive silver lining to this is that fresh produce gets favored, but high fat, sugar, salt products, specifically snacking, and for me the potato industry and specifically starches, there we're going to see a slight decline in demand, certainly with high caloric foods as well. So although the change will be more towards leafy greens, I think what you are going to see is a calorie reduction amongst consumers. So that is going to cause capacity issues, that's going to cause a big supply-demand imbalance in the end. Right now, the household penetration is very low. So in the US, 1 out of every 10 households has somebody on GLP-1s. In the UK, last year, it was 3%, it's already up to 6%. So you have an exponential jump over there. And I think this is, as much as it's a threat or a risk to some categories, it's going to be an opportunity for others. And I think as you track that household penetration development country by country, you're going to start to get a sense of what that's going to be. Like I said, it really is going to be an opportunity for fruit and vegetables specifically. If you go to the next slide. But it's relative resilience. So with consumers eating less, it's not like a massive opportunity for fruit and vegetable, but these will be favored over high calorie, high fat, sugar, salt categories. So you're going to see changing demand effectively.
That's so interesting. This is the first I'm hearing about GLP-1s and the impact that they could have on the seed industry for sure. When you first told me that, I was shocked actually that the penetration in some of these big markets like the US and the UK is so great that it is already having that, effect.
I think there's a bigger opportunity as well here, and that is that people that take these medications have a nutrient deficiency, and if you can increase their nutrient intake with breeding, I think that could be a massive opportunity.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you for that. I also wanted to mention climate change, which could be its own panel, such a huge topic. But because this year, within a few months, we will be seeing the start of the El Nino weather phenomenon, I wanted to ask you what the seed industry might expect there and what effects it could have. Bharti, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, as Tania mentioned, we are expecting a El Nino, and there was this recent update from the NOAA, which is a United States Department for Climate Change, and it came just on this Saturday, wherein they mentioned that they are expecting El Nino to reach around 84% by July, and then it is expected to persist through the winters of 2026 and 2027 by 96%. There's also a chance that this is going to be a very, it could be a super El Nino, so there would be huge impact of this El Nino on the crop production. Now the question is, how is it impacting the seed industry? So, it caused the uneven production in the regions that are important to us. So, say for example, if you look at Brazil, so it will cause more rainfall, which we might see the rainfalls are good for yield. But if we look at past 4 El Ninos, we can, the yields for corn have declined because of the flooding and because of the delay in the harvest. And if we look at the soybean for the same reason, the crop yields have increased, but that has increased the disease pressure and the quality. So it is actually, not just a weather story, I would say. Maybe it is more of a demand driver for seed traits for the region, wherein maybe we need, the hybrids that have the shorter cycles or disease-resistant traits. For Asian region, maybe the drought tolerance traits. So this is kind of a demand driver for seed traits.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there anything that you're following on that front, Shaun?
I'm not prepared for that question,
that's okay.
Tania, sorry.
Thank you so much. I wanted to actually, sorry for jumping around everyone, but I had skipped a question, and it is about going back to the Middle East war and the crisis that is causing. I wanted to ask about the potential effects for biofuels. And I know that a lot of us here are thinking about energy security. A lot of governments are perhaps turning to biofuels and looking to boost production there. What could that mean for the seed industry? Is that an opportunity?
That's true. So, we have been seeing biofuel as a ramping up driver for the seed industry for the coming decade for a long time, looking at the several partnerships that are happening between the seed companies and the energy companies. But now this Middle East situation has kind of accelerated the entire thing. So if you look at the governments, they are working on their biofuel mandates. You look at the Asian countries, India, Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia, all they are, increasing their blending mandates. And other than that, the other things that are happening in the seed industry are the development of the biofuel-specific crops, whether it is camelina, carinata, panicus, or winter canola. So these crops are specifically being developed for as a biofuel feedstock. And also, if we look at the demand for these feedstock, the demand has, based on the S&P data, the demand has exponentially, it has increased. Like, if you look at 2023, it has increased from 60 million tons to 2027, 72 million tons. And then there is a gap between the demand and the consumption. So, because of that, we are expecting that to be filled, that gap to be filled by the crop-based feedstocks. And Other than that, in the biofuel sector, so I already mentioned about the demand coming from countries, from the Middle East situation, and then we see the changes, and then we see the seed companies making the move. So basically, right now, if you look at the seed industry, the energy security is making the demand, making the innovation turn around towards the energy security related trades, like the biofuel trades. And for the first time, the innovation in the seed industry is not just driven by yield, but also being driven by the low carbon intensity. So this is huge. It's a big change. But we do not see a lot of impact during this time because it takes time to breed seed and for seeds to enter the market.
Yeah.
But definitely in the coming decade, it will be a huge driver for the industry.
Definitely. So this time period seems to be kind of a new catalyst, if
Yes.
you will. Yeah. Okay. Anything to add, Shaun, on, yeah.
I think we're seeing this in various industries, and certainly the chemical industry sees this as a massive opportunity for defossilization, not so much decarbonization, but I think the chemical industry will be looking for bio-based input going forward as well.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, something for everyone here to keep their eye on. I'm actually going to go back to this slide here. I was wondering if there is anything that, Shaun, you would like, as we are nearing the end of our first day here, you've heard a little bit about some of the concerns of the seed industry here. From this chart, is there anything that you are thinking about more from your perch? You have access to so many numbers that you think that more people in this room should be aware of and have on their radar in terms of disruptors for the period ahead?
I think it's the stack disruptors themselves. If you look at prior to 2019, we had a crisis and then another crisis. It was isolated and it was by itself. Whereas this decade, and as you said in the introduction here, it's just stacking. If you speak to people in different companies, there's a lot of burnout because we're all dealing with a lot of change, and change in every single industry. What I thought were just issues in potato, I'm seeing in many other industries as well. So we're having to do a lot more work to get the same results as before, but having to navigate through enormous amounts of complexity. And this is making everything a lot slower and, well, fast on one side, slower on the other to deal with it. And the global agri-food industry is individual connections between farmer and supplier, or farmer and customer, or supplier and customer. This entire industry is not one big single thing. It's millions of people, billions of people working together. And working together under this kind of stress and time constraints, it's difficult, it's not easy. And I think also coming back to what we were saying this morning about the future of food with the youth, we need to tell the kids this as well. We need to tell this to younger people coming into the industry. This is not normal, and what we're dealing with right now is unprecedented, but it's things that we're going to need to deal with to be able to feed a global population, still have profitable companies, and enjoy our lives.
Definitely. Yeah, it's true. The only constant is change, but even more true now than ever. Bharti, is there anything you wanted to add to that in terms of some disruptor that you wish more people in this room, that you would like more people in this room to really have on their mind this year?
Not about this year, but I think if, specifically I have to talk about the seed industry, and I think there is one slide that we did not discuss. That was the biggest disruptor for the seed industry, and that is your R&D. Give me a second if I could. Yes.
Yes.
So,
okay.
If you look at the, various input sectors, seed is the industry which is the most innovation-driven industry, and 10 to 15% of seed sales, company seed sales goes to R&D. And even there are companies wherein the R&D share goes to around 30%, especially the vegetable seed companies. So, if you compare it with any other sector, it is almost at par with the pharmaceutical sector, wherein the R&D is this level of percentage, 15% R&D. And if we compare it with the crops production or machinery or fertilizer, you can see the spend of R&D is very less. So, and that also explains why seed is an R&D-driven industry, why it is not getting so much impacted by trade war. But, when we compare it with the fertilizer, it has a lot of dependence on several other factors that is actually causing, a lot of fluctuation in the fertilizer market size and market growth going forward. But seed is a resilient industry, and the reason behind the resilience in the seed industry is the R&D that is coming from the industry.
Very important. I mean, building resilience, more important now than ever, for sure. We are just at time. Thank you so much, Bharti and Shaun, for these, rapid fire, 100 different disruptors that we tried to capture in half an hour. So much more to say on all of these things. I hope you will all attend all of the other panels to come in the next 2 days. Thank you so much.
Thank you.